Hello, and welcome to another NABBW Financial Podcast. Tonight, I'm with regular guest Pam Sams to discuss our very important March topic, how women can secure their financial futures. We selected this topic for tonight for several reasons. First, March is International Women's Month, a month focused on celebrating women's achievements and raising awareness about gender equality. And April, the month we're quickly heading into, celebrates several worthy topics, including financial literacy. Now, financial literacy, I think, is something that all of us need to know more about. As I was thinking about this, I was realizing that we women are known for our ability to do it all. We lead households, we pay bills, we run companies, we act as family caretakers and more. And hopefully we find time to keep ourselves healthy too. But it started me to think about that 70s era song with the chorus, "Cause I'm a woman," WOMAN, says in that, there's a line in there that says, "There ain't nothing I can't do." But when I reviewed the lyrics of the song the other day, I realized that nowhere in the lyrics does the singer say that she can generate income, balance her checkbook, or create a budget. So I think she's missing some important skill sets. But anyway, this failure to mention any financial skill sets corresponds with a Nerd Wallet article I found while preparing for tonight's discussion. In it, Sylvia Kwan, Chief Investment Officer at Ellevest, opined that women often feel like they need to wait until they earn a higher salary or have accumulated enough money to get started investing. But time and compounding are powerful allies toward building wealth and achieving a comfortable retirement. We want women to get engaged early and to invest early and consistently. No doubt, that's why part of a recent CNBC article reported that when it comes to saving for the future, women's average total retirement income is just income savings is just $23,000, whereas men's average total retirement savings is over 3 times higher at $76,000. Now, from what Pam and I have been telling everybody for the last couple of years, I don't think any of that is enough money, but of course, Pam, you're going to advise us that this delay in savings and the resulting smaller size of the savings is unfortunate and something that we want to change. But I'm leading you on here and getting ahead of myself. Audience, before Pam and I dive into our March discussion, let me tell you a little bit about your presenters. I'm Ann Holmes, your moderator and the Boomer-in-Chief of the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, an organization dedicated to educating and empowering women at midlife and beyond. And with me is Pamela J. Sams, BFA, CRPC, MBA, and trusted advisor to professional women. Pam is a chartered retirement planning counselor and NABBW's retirement planning associate. An expert in personal finance, Pam is president of Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies, interned in Virginia. And together, we bring you a monthly discussion of important information related to money and financial planning. Welcome everyone to our March 2022 NABBW financial Zoom call covering women and their financial security. We're glad that you've joined us. Now, there's just one more thing I need to do before we can launch into tonight's discussion, and that's play a quick audio clip.
Securities offered through Securities America Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Incorporated, a SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Pamela Sams, investment advisor representative. Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies, Securities America Incorporated, and all other entities named are separate entities.
All right, we're official now. Thanks for joining us again, Pam.
Thanks, Ed, for having me once again, and happy Women's History Month. We're almost towards the end, but need to get that out there, and I've been having loads of fun seeing all of the social media and all the posts and all of the different things that are going on this month. We have our first Black woman who will soon hopefully be confirmed as a justice, chief justice in the Supreme Court. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I am too.
So a lot's going on this month as it relates to women and our history and women empowerment.
Yes, absolutely true. And I certainly hope that she gets through all the gauntlet of stuff that they always put candidates through, because
Mhm.
It's a challenge, but she seems to be holding her own so far. So I hope
Mhm.
that she manages to continue on with it.
Yes,
Now, the
exactly.
topic for tonight, how women can secure their financial future. I want to start by assuring our listeners that if they're not currently where they want to be in their retirement
Mhm.
planning journey, they shouldn't freak out, because
Yes.
Pam here has 10 points she will be covering tonight, designed to help get us back on the right track and get us on the track in the first place if we haven't really started. So, Pam, your first point is have a plan.
Yeah, in your intro, you had mentioned, sometimes we as women, we're natural caregivers, and we like to take care of other people first, and sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. So the old adage that on your airline you're supposed to put on your oxygen mask first, and
Mhm.
then attend to others. Unfortunately, we have that flipped as women when it comes to our own money. We support children, we support elderly parents, and sometimes we don't put away for ourselves. But having a game plan in place, just like when you're driving your car, most of us have GPS either on our car or on our phones now to tell us where we need to go.
Mhm.
That's the same thing with having a plan. Is that if you want to achieve something and secure your future financial future, you have to start with a plan, have that roadmap, have that GPS in essence, in order from get you to point A to point B in the most efficient manner. So really, a lot of people just, on a day to day, and we do have to deal with our daily finances, but sometimes we don't look to the future and what we need to do. And that's what that plan would do is really, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to put in place now in order to project yourself into the future on what you would
Mhm.
need to do? And that is the statistic that you had mentioned. It is a very alarming statistic. It is true that we tend to be a little save less than what men do in their overall retirement plans. And so having a plan in place to tell you exactly what do you need to put in place may help you secure your financial future a little bit better, knowing what you need to do now in order to move the needle to get you where you want to be in the
Mhm.
future.
Exactly. Well, having a plan uh, is a great first step. I totally agree with you about that. But there's a long time that we need to be planning for. So I think it really makes sense what your second point is, because we probably have to break that plan up into pieces and
Mhm.
then try to do one step at a time. And that's why I believe that your second point of what we need to be working on is goal setting.
Yes, and that's where you start. The plan is devised of goals. Everybody probably, all of the audience members have probably heard of SMART goals, something that's specific, something that's measurable, actionable, realistic, and then time bound. So the same thing with your financial goals. You want to make sure you put those in place because having goals is really the foundation of your financial success, and understanding how you need to define those and then how you prioritize those accordingly. You don't want to end up using having education planning, but then also foregoing your retirement plan. They're both important, but
Mhm.
you can always borrow for education. You can't borrow for your retirement. So you need to put in place the financial goals that you have and then put timelines on those. And then they will also have a timeline on how much you need to save towards that goal. And then also, of course, like I said, prioritize what's going to come first and what's the most important. But having the goals in place really kind of puts that foundation, that solid plan that I talked about in kind of step one, is have the plan and then breaking those down into bite-sized pieces. I
Mhm.
always say is that how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Same thing with your plan. You'll have specific goals that you want to achieve. And then from that, you're going to break that down into what do I need to do now? What do I need to do monthly or yearly or, quarterly or whatever you need to do in order to get there 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 or 30 years from now. But knowing what goals you want to achieve and then putting some type of parameters around it, prioritizing, and then understanding what do you need to do to achieve those goals. But first, it starts with goal setting. Is that we
Mhm.
have some of these things in our brain sometimes, but we don't put them down to, okay, now I need to educate my child that may be 10 years from now, but what is it going to take? What do I need to do? And then also, planning accordingly. What kind of schools are they looking at? Is it
Mhm.
public school? Is it going to be private? Is it going to be a 2 year associate's degree and then a 1 to a 4 year? So all of that goes into the goal setting on once you break down the goal into more actionable steps.
Do you think that those goals really need to be written down, like keeping keeping them on a calendar or keeping them in some kind of a journal, or um, my experience is that
Mhm.
if we don't write them down somewhere, it's too easy to forget about them sometimes.
Exactly. And that's what, the plan does. And that's what I do, with my clients when I develop the plan is that all once the plan is in place, we have all of the goals and what the timelines are and prioritizing, kind of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or how many goals that they have. But, Harvard study years ago said that people who have written goals are more than likely to achieve those. Those who do
Mhm.
not, like you said, either forget about it or it's not concrete. And if it's just in our brains and it's not on our paper, it's more kind of a dream versus a reality. So
Mhm.
putting it down in writing, just like we've heard when we take college courses or when we take courses, the more you write things down, the more you retain information. It's the same thing with your goals. If you have them written down, you have kind of a record of it, but then it becomes more of a reality versus kind of a dream state or a wish.
Mhm.
So really having written goals to accomplish for the future is where that goal setting comes into place. And that's just not your finances. That's basically anything in life that you want to is make sure you have written goals.
Excellent. And I think that this is not something that I learned in college about goal setting. It's something that I had to
Mhm.
learn as an adult later on. And I don't know if that's something that, I should have learned from my parents or I'm not quite sure why I didn't really understand about goal setting until, I mean, I knew that I was going to go to
Mhm.
college and that I was going to graduate, but, and that obviously was a goal, but
Yeah.
I didn't really have anything written down about it. So I'm happy to say that I did it in 4 years and and not like some of my family that have had to take more than 4 years
Yeah,
to get.
exactly. Yeah, and I think it's also I wouldn't say a new concept, but it's a fairly recent thing that people are talking about written goals. Like you said, the same thing when I was growing up. I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew, kind of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, but it wasn't really written down anywhere.
Mhm.
So I think, like you said, it's more of a kind of a recent um, thing that having written goals and all of those. And I think that Harvard study it was done, years ago, but that's kind of what they had looked at as they did. I think they had took a graduate, well, students from Harvard, and they told them to write down their goals, and then it was kind of a placebo group that they
Mhm.
told them that they didn't, and then they measured it 10 years or 20 years in the future, and those who had written those had actually achieved those. Those who did not didn't achieve as many or not at all. So I
Mhm.
think that was kind of what the disparity. They were just trying to say, okay, if you have written goals, more than likely you will achieve theirs versus not. So I think,
Mhm.
like I said, it's more of a recent concept based on that study, and that's when they came up with SMART goals and all of these things. But having those down along with your plan, it at least gives you an opportunity to secure or achieve success in the future as in terms of your finances.
Excellent. Point number 3 is such an important one, and you've distilled it down to one word here, which is learn. And
Yes.
so I think that it's so critical for all of us to realize that we have to keep learning. It's not
Hmm.
something that we graduated from high school, college, grad school, law school, whatever, and then we're done learning. That's
Mhm.
not really what it's all about.
Exactly, and we should always be students of learning,
Hmm.
especially in terms of finances, and of course with women, as we're talking about securing our futures, really learning all about your finances. You don't have to become expert, or a planner like myself, or have an MBA in financial management like I do, but understanding kind of the basics of how money works. I think we've had several conversations, and throughout the years of now, I believe in Florida, DeSantis just recently signed a bill that makes it required before high school students receive a diploma that they have some type of financial literacy or some type of financial education.
Hmm.
And we never really got that, or we never really learned how to deal with money. Though money makes the world go around, it's not as really important, but you have to operate in that arena, and not
Hmm.
knowing it from going to our parents' house and probably quasi on our own in college, and then all of a sudden out in the real world, and never really have taken advantage of learning how money operates, how the economy operates. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of learning, really just kind of learning the basics of money management, but also how money operates in this country, what the Fed rates are, what the Federal Reserve does, how the
Hmm.
stock market works. You don't need to know all of the intricacies, but basically, how to buy stocks, or how to invest, and it's really just kind of learning all about your financial world, because we do
Hmm.
have to operate in that. Like I said, you don't have to be an expert, but really learning some of the things that you need to know in order to secure your future. Because the more you know, the better you'll be at it, and the more likely you will be able to achieve that.
Now, do you think that um, working with an expert such as yourself is another good way to learn?
Yeah, it is. I go through a lot of education with my clients. I make sure they understand the concepts, but also understand why they have certain things as well. Because I want to make sure my clients are well educated.
Hmm.
I really don't like people who just either sell things, or put things in place without letting their clients understand the backstory on
Hmm.
why certain things are put in place in their financial plan to achieve their financial goals. So yeah, really working with an advisor, or somebody that will be able to kind of walk you through is also a learning as well.
Hmm.
And education like this that we put on each month, and it's also a learning thing
Hmm.
that people can tune into, and through the website, through NABBW, and also these webinars, to understand some of the concepts and
Hmm.
continue to learn.
Well, when I think back to my education in high school, um, which was, general education. Then when I went to college, it was
Mhm.
more specialized. But in my general education, I think the only financial information that came to me through school learning was how to write a check. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you spell the words, and
And letters.
these
Yeah.
these these sorts of basic things about how to write a check. When
Yeah.
I think back about the financial learning that came to me through school, through grade 12, I really am not sure that there really was anything besides how to write a check.
How to write a check. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think most of us were the same here. And is that I think the most of us went through, like, at the time, I don't even know if they have it in schools these days, but it was home economics,
Hmm.
where that's where you learn how to cook and clean and do all of these. And it was a basic kind of how do you write a check and how do you balance a checkbook type of
Hmm.
thing. But other than that, that's probably the extent of what was
Hmm.
explained in K through 12 as it relates to our money. So they're doing a lot better with putting some of these and making a requirement in some states. I know in my region in Virginia, they have some of the districts that at least a couple of 1 or 2 semesters, or you have to take either economics course and a finance course. So they are doing better to try to introduce it a little bit earlier to children in the schools, because when they go off to college and then all of a sudden they have a lot of student loans, they sign the paper, they sign the promissory notes, but really don't understand also how
Mhm.
student loans work.
Right.
And so, and when they get out of college and now they're making money, the loans come due. What's your interest rate, how long it's going to be to pay it, all of those things. And it would be beneficial if they knew how to budget and manage their money a little bit better, to really understand how finances work. So really learning as you go.
Mhm.
So if you weren't taught, a lot of times people go, "Well, I wasn't taught it," but that doesn't that doesn't say that you can't start learning now. You always have to be a student of learning if you want to know something, especially over the last couple of years in the pandemic, and we didn't have a whole lot to do. There
Mhm.
was plenty of time to get on the internet, read some books, do some things like that to educate yourself on a variety of different topics. I knew a lot of people that got certifications in a variety of different things during the pandemic, because it was 24/7. I don't have anything to
Mhm.
do. It's
Right.
only so much Netflix I can watch.
Right.
Uh, so be productive and start
Mhm.
learning some things as well. And so that's the point of learn in this context is make sure you know how finances work, at least the basics, so you can do better with your overall money to secure your future.
All right. Excellent and so important. Now, point number 4, I think we're going back a little bit to the having a plan, because
Mhm.
point number 4 is imagine your future. In other words, how do you want your future to look?
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with, colleagues and I've, been doing some studying on, I know the MIT Age Lab is really an excellent resource on how to secure your future, but also this conversation of imagining your future. Sometimes, while we're where we are right now, it's hard to imagine our future selves. So what does Pam look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now? And really understanding what do you want that to look like, and then kind of work your way backwards. So
Mhm.
if you want, 20 years from now, Pam, to have this, you need to be doing something different here.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of imagined in the future. When I'm working with my clients, a lot of times is that we're really focused on the money piece, which is definitely very, very important when it comes to securing your future. But also, what is that future going to look like? A lot of times people don't understand, in retirement, what are you going to be doing? Now you have 24/7. You don't
Mhm.
you don't wake up in the morning, the clock is not going to ring. You're not going to get up and work 8 hours. That 8 hours is a long day if you're not doing anything.
Mhm.
And
Right.
a lot of times people don't realize that you also have to plan on what that future is going to look like. How are you going to feel that? I just had a client recently retire, actually few weeks ago, and so he's planning it out. He's trying to figure out, what am I going to do for 8 hours in a day.
Mhm.
So he planned some golf and volunteer work and all of those, but there's only so much golf and volunteer you can do over 30 years. So what does that look like? Is it a second act? Is it, starting a business? Is it running a foundation or nonprofit? Whatever the case may be for you, it's really just trying to imagine what that's going to look like.
Mhm.
You're imagining and projecting your future self. Um, it was several years ago, and I'm still trying to, maybe incorporate it in my practice. Is that it was a time, it was a piece of software. It was at a conference I went to, which was really interesting. It's a piece of software where you can basically put a picture of yourself and it'll age you, and it'll
Yeah.
show you what you would look like. And so really trying to marry the two together, because like I said, it's
Mhm.
hard for us to project ourselves into the future. But if you see this kind of timeline of yourself on what you may look like 30 years from now, you kind of come a kindred spirit. It is you, but it's a kindred
Mhm.
spirit that I want 30 year from now, Pam,
Mhm.
and this person, and I can see it, and it's physical, and it can tangible, and I can understand. Maybe it will affect what I do here in the present. So it was really interesting presentation that I saw, and I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate it, because that's the disconnect sometimes when I get with my clients. women clients is that it's hard to project or imagine our futures. But if we can kind of put those together and understand 20 years from now, 30 years from now, your future self, what do I need to do and work backwards to make sure that person's going to be satisfied with their life in the future?
Mhm. Well, I think that is a really important step. And before I bought the NABBW, what I had been doing prior to that, immediately prior to that, was I had been doing coaching. Um, it's strange that I got into coaching because I hired a coach to help me because I wanted to write a book. Now, keep in mind, this book hasn't been published yet, so maybe the coach didn't do a good enough job to get me to get the book finished. It's There's a lot of stuff related to the book
Yeah.
in the lower shelf of my desk, but it's never gotten finished. But anyway, so I hired this coach, and that was the first time that I hired a coach. And it at the end of my coaching sessions with him, I think I worked for like 3 months or something with him coaching. He suggested that I would make a good coach, and I agreed to give it a try. And primarily what he sent to me were people that had signed up to coach with him. And they were people that were of baby boomer age, and they were getting to the point where they were starting to imagine their future and trying to figure out what are they going to do when they retire, and realizing that your future self cannot spend the whole time um, doing, as you were talking about, you can't just play golf the whole time. You can't watch TV or even read books the whole time. And a lot of what I was finding out when I worked with these people was they were really into the concept of starting some kind of a business that had to do with something that they loved, because they would like to see their future self doing something that they loved. And so I really found that that coaching that I did, sometime I'd like to get back to it, because I really found that it was so rewarding to help people to figure out the steps that they needed to figure out in order to get from where they are now to this place that they imagined themselves to be.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what would that business be, and how would it generate income? Because I always had to tell them that, it's just fun unless you're making money. It's just something that you're enjoying doing. It's a hobby, but to call it a business, it's supposed to be making you some money. So I'm
Exactly.
getting off of your track here, but I really think that the concept of imagining your future and working on the steps that you need to take to get it to where, what are you going to have to do between now and 30 years, Pam, or 30 years, Ann?
Yeah.
What are you going to do to make that happen? That's priceless and very important imagination. So I'm glad you had that part of your list. And now point number 5 is one that you and I like to talk about a lot, and it's a very important one because to get to our future where we want it to be, pay down your debt.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I seriously stress when I'm working with people when they're dealing with their retirement plan, because I try to, mortgage is probably okay, because a lot of
Mhm.
times I get, should I pay off my mortgage before I retire? But consumer debt, is really one of the things that I like to make sure clients go into retirement, hopefully debt free, as in terms of consumer debt, because that really takes away from the overall amount that you need to sustain or deal with your expenses on a day to day. You don't want $200 or $300 going towards credit cards when you need that really to run your household. So
Mhm.
really paying off debt, that's kind of the one of the areas of your financial plan, or included in your plan, is how are you going to get out of debt. And so, sadly, you really can't kick off a sound financial future if you're carrying tons of debt, just like I just explained. So you want to make sure you have a game plan on try to figure out how to pay that down. I think we've talked about in a few different calls on kind of the snowball method, where you're kind of working on paying the smallest balances and then paying those off in increments, or the avalanche, which is the reverse, which you pay the highest interest rates first, and then you work your way down to pay those off, and at some point really just throwing more money at it, but systematically. There's a
Mhm.
lot of time. It's a way to either do the snowball or do the avalanche. But what I see a lot is people, let me throw another 20 or $30 here. You want to make sure you have some type of strategy in order to pay. It's a debt reduction strategy, either through a snowball or an avalanche. But and then you put on what we call an accelerator margin, that you put a certain amount on there, so you're not just throwing money at it in order to put it down. You want to have a systematic way to pay your debt down strategically,
Mhm.
so you can get to the most efficient way to pay it, to get yourself and pay off your debt and get yourself out of debt. I know a lot of people still straddle with student loans, and they're going to become due fairly soon, since that will be coming off of the forbearance, I believe, in May sometime. So starting June, people need to figure out how you're going to pay your student loans, in the most efficient manner as well. There's public loan forgiveness if you're working as a teacher, or you're working in, an environment where they qualify for public loan forgiveness. So if that's something that you qualify for, make sure you do contact your loan servicer or the Department of Education to see if you qualify for that. If you have several loans out, maybe perhaps consolidating them as well. You may be able to get some lower interest rates now, and also, some lower payments. So if people are in an area where they feel that their student loan debt may be significant, there are programs and there's ways to try to efficiently pay those down or
Mhm.
pay those back, as well. So that's something to think about, because I wanted to mention that because we're going to be coming out of that forbearance fairly soon. And people have been, a little bit, haven't thought about it because it
Mhm.
hasn't been, they haven't had to
Right.
pay for over the last almost 2.5 years or so. So, I don't want to, oops, all of a sudden now I have to have this extra debt now that I'm responsible for it. That's part of paying off your debt in the most reliable, efficient manner. Now you may have a student loan payment coming back. Make sure you also figure out how you're going to pay that down and pay that off, in the most efficient manner, either through public loan forgiveness if you qualify for it, maybe consolidation, and some other, ways that you may want to contact your loan servicer or the Department of Education to look at your options.
And that's very important, paying down the debt. And the next one that we're going to be talking about, which is budgeting. And
Mhm.
especially these two are important because I recently read that uh, we've always been told that when we retire, we don't require as much money as it requires for us to live when we're in our pre-retirement phase of our
Mhm.
life, when we're having to get ourselves to work, so we have vehicle expenses and or else transportation expenses of some sort, and we need work clothes, and we have
Mhm.
to pay for where we live, and we have to pay for food. But this article that I read recently said that it's probably not really true that we're going to save that much money by being retired and not having to go to work. So
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, and I think that's the case because now, I mean, as you know, and things are inflated. Groceries, I just went grocery shopping. I was like, hey, that used to be,
right.
price, and now it's this price is much higher. Same thing with gas prices. Things happen in terms of inflation, that we could be spending just as much, in retirement, based on kind of just the cost of living going up.
Mhm.
So that may not, like you said, but necessarily be true as it relates to your overall expenses and retirement. That's why, again, just like the going into retirement debt free from consumer debt, you can, the same thing with understanding your budget,
Mhm.
is really the key to a secure financial future, because you need to know what's coming in and what's going out. And when you are retired, you're not going to get the every 2 week paycheck that you used to. You'll get a social
Right.
security check. You'll probably get, it may be even a pension if you have a pension, and then you can draw funds from your IRA or, employer sponsored plans, at that point. But usually it's going to be monthly. So
Mhm.
if you're used to every 2 weeks, and then that all of a sudden now you pile of money that only comes in monthly, that budget really becomes very, very important to understand that you're not overspending on things, and you do have to account for inflation. We are experiencing a little bit higher, more higher inflation situation than we had, I think, over the last 40 years.
Mhm.
So hopefully it won't, sustain. We'll go back a little bit, not too much, but just to think where we're going to be, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that budget becomes ever so important to understand what you're going to be bringing in, and then what's going to be going out, and then that kind of the needs and wants that I always talk about is that what do you get, what are the necessities? I need to feed myself and clothe myself, and eat, and housing, things like
Mhm.
that. So you need to do that. That will be your fixed expenses, and then you have your discretionary expenses. So understanding where things are spending money on, and budget accordingly to make sure you're not going to run out of money. The second part of that is really because of your investments, making sure you're not drawing down too much out of your resources either. So if you don't have that budget
Right.
straight, you could be withdrawing more money out of your plans,
Mhm.
and then you could, in essence, 4% is kind of generally the rule that most people are saying in terms of a successful withdrawal rate. People have a lot of advisors and a lot of economists have come back and say maybe it's not four, maybe it's like 2.5 or 3. So if you don't have that budget right and you're still working on a 4% or 5%, you could draw down your resources a lot sooner. So
Mhm.
try to make sure you have a budget, especially going into retirement, that you understand what their inflows and your outflows in order to make sure you secure your future, because you don't want to withdraw in too much, trying to sustain a budget that may or may not be accurate,
Mhm.
and then you end up running out of money, and we don't want to see that.
Right. And you are correct about learning to live with a monthly influx of income into your household. When I was in grad school, I got a job with the university, and I didn't ask them how I got paid. They just told me what the pay was, and it turned out that it was a monthly and a month late. So when I first started, I had to work 2 months before they gave me a check. And that was fortunate that I was married and my husband had an income because waiting 2 months to get paid was a real
Mhm.
shock to me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing. I always tell people if they apply for Social Security, it's going to be a while.
Mhm.
Usually, when you apply for Social Security, it'll probably be about a month and a half before you get that first check. So you do have to plan accordingly when you start applying for that. Same thing with your pension.
Mhm.
Sometimes that happens. I'm working with a client right now that I told you that retired a couple of weeks ago. He worked for the federal government. There's a process. You fill out the paperwork. It goes to some place. They look at it. It goes to another place, then they will start scheduling your pension, and then you will get paid. So that can be like a 90-day process, just trying to
Mhm.
figure out when your pension is going to show up. So what we did for him is making sure he had enough cushion, so for that 90 days before his first pension check shows up, that he before he got paid, to still run his household, and understanding what needs to be paid, because that's 90 days, that's
Mhm.
basically 3 months that you won't have a check from when you stopped or retired until you get your first pension check. And a lot of people don't understand that sometimes it is a lag between when you fill out all of your retirement paperwork and when you get your first paycheck in retirement. Same thing with Social Security. When you apply for Social Security, it's not going to be the next day. They have to process it. They have to put you in the system. Then they will do it. And usually that's about, either 30 to 60 days before you get
Mhm.
your Social Security check. So planning accordingly, so you're not caught in kind of this gap between when you leave employment and when you get your first resources from your pension or your Social Security. Hopefully, if people have saved, then they'll have some money in either cash reserve and or their retirement plans that they could withdraw from, because that's fairly simple to get out. but your pension and your Social Security does take a little bit in order to kick in.
Okay. Well, you mentioned savings, and that's the seventh point on your list is
Mhm.
save. So
Yeah,
let's talk
exactly.
about that.
Yeah, well, that was a great segue, right?
Right.
So, it's all about saving. We had talked about in the beginning with your stats. We've only saved as women 23,000 towards our retirement, which that's definitely nearly not enough. So the saving part is really important as you try to secure your financial future. The first part is really the cash reserve, making sure you have enough for emergencies that pop up in your situation. For general rule of thumb, it's about 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. I know it's a large number for some people, but again, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Same thing. If you can save or consistently to put something away for your future, you would start doing that. Same thing with saving for any of your financial goals that you put away that we talked about in step two is
Mhm.
the goal setting. So if you have um, retirement planning, you have education, you have down payment for your new home or things like that, they require saving. So you have understand what do you need to put away in each of those particular goals to reach those. So it is all about saving when it comes to your goals. And so what I do generally with my clients is that we have the goal set, the goals that are listed, and then we break them down. How much do you need in each of those categories? Then we glean out of their income and their expenses. Kind of that's where that budget comes into play as well. And any freed up cash flow, that's where you start parceling out on your goals from that. So if you have an extra $1,000 saved over or 2,000 a month, then we need to break that out. What needs to go to cash reserve, what needs to go to additional retirement, what needs to go to education, what needs to go to that. And so each of those resources will have I'm sorry, each one of those goals will have its own strategy and how much it needs to be funded by based on your cash flow. So that's what happens when you start saving. You'll start working towards your goals, and then you understand what needs to be, how much you need to save for each of those particular goals.
Excellent. Point number 8 was the one that we don't talk about as much as we talk about budgeting, and that is investing.
Yeah. So right after you start saving, saving is generally your, savings account, checking account, money market account. You're going to get interest there as it stands now, minimal interest. Interest rates probably will be going up a little bit because of the Fed funds rate. So you'll probably start to see some of the interest rates go up in banks and things like that. But after that, you need to really, in order to grow wealth, you need to start investing. So that is generally stock market investing or some type of real estate or whatever, something that's going to generate some rate of return that's more than what you would have in the bank or CD or money market account. So learning how to invest, just like I talked about in step three, the learn process is that how do you invest efficiently? We as women tend to be a little bit more conservative because we're not confident and we don't know all of the ins and outs about investing. And as you know, and when we as women, we tend to shy away from things that we are unfamiliar with and we're not confident with, and we end up going more conservative. So that's what happens.
Mhm.
A lot of times when we as women start to invest is that we go in real conservative because we're not sure. But at some point, you're gonna your buying power is gonna end up eroding because you're now outpacing inflation. You might as well have just left it in the savings account if you were gonna go real conservative because you're not growing your money efficiently. So really learning and educating yourself on which investments are best for you and which ones will get you to your goals. You're going to invest a lot differently for a down payment for your home that you need within 1 to 2 years versus what you need 30 years from now for retirement. Same thing for sending your kids to school or putting away money for a second home or vacation home. So each one of those goals that I talked about before will have its own time horizon and its own investment strategy. So with investing for like a down payment for a house within 1 to 3 years, yeah, it'll probably be better to be more conservative because you're going to need that money right away. You
Mhm.
can't weather the storm of what's going on right now with the stock market because you're going to need that money back right away. Versus if you had 30 years, you can weather the storm a little bit with some of the ebbs and flows on the stock market. But knowing which ones are best for you, how to invest, and then learning the best strategies for you, and then maybe partnering with a professional to teach you how the investment world works and why you need to have certain things in your portfolio is really the key as well. But it's all about investing to grow wealth.
All right, but it takes us back to point number 3, which is learning.
Yeah, but just learning.
Right. All right. Point number 9 is you've given us a one word
Yeah.
for a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, there's a
career.
lot of stuff. Career, yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people don't think, securing your future deals with your career, but here's what I mean by the career, is that a lot of times that's kind of what's going to drive how we're going to save our money. So if you're in a low paying job versus a high paying job, that's really going to dictate how much money you're able to put away in your retirement plans. So as you're, especially, if we have younger women on the call, is that, devise on where you want your career trajectory to take you, where you want to be in order to secure your future. So if you're, making $15 an hour now, where do you need to be or where do you want to be in order to secure your future so you can put away more money? Or perhaps retire a little bit earlier. I'm working with a client now who's a traveling nurse, so, nurses, they make really good money, but their career is very short-lived because it's taxing on their bodies and their stress levels and all of that. She works as a neonatal nurse.
Mhm.
So, we're probably trying to get her retired prior to earlier to 60. So, based on that, how do we need to start putting money away for or earlier retirement for her based on her career?
Mhm.
The same thing with somebody who wants to put away more money. Maybe you need to make more money. So, what careers are out there that you are interested in that you can take advantage of that pay you more money so you can put away more money for your future to secure your future? So that's what I mean by career, is really making sure you are strategic about it, and then put in a game plan to get there, to, negotiate salaries, look for higher paying jobs. As women, sometimes we stay stagnant and we don't ask for the promotions, we don't ask for
Mhm.
higher salaries, or or we just in positions or in careers that will never move the needle in terms of making more money. So that puts us behind on what we can save for on
Mhm.
retirement. I have a client that unfortunately she's working her own business, but it's a daycare business, making really good money, but she never thought to put money away, you know, for her future. So now
Mhm.
we're backpedaling to try to put money together for her retirement. So that was a career choice that she made earlier in her 20s, and now she's in almost her 50s, making really good money, but never really put anything away, because that was something, as a self-employed person, and I'm sure we have self-employed people on the phone, is that you are responsible for to put in for your own retirement plan.
Right.
That when you're working, you
Mhm.
and I know, and is that we need to put away. We're working, but we
Right.
also need to be strategic when putting some of these things in place, that we can't rely on an employer because we are our own employers. So
Mhm.
it's the same thing, is that we need to put those benefits in place and the retirement plans in place for us as entrepreneurs. So that's a career choice that we have, but just as important, we need to secure our futures by putting away money for that as well.
Well, very important topic, and probably one that when we're young, we need to be training our young people to think about this in more depth. But I was intrigued with your talking about the traveling nurse, because I read an
Mhm.
article in the newspaper in the last month where it was talking about since COVID started, uh, there are so many nurses that are doing this traveling nurse type of
Hmm.
situation because they're going where the need is.
Correct. Yeah.
And the situation is that these women are not just women, men and women who are nursing and doing
Hmm.
the traveling nursing. They might be making 3 times the hourly rate that you make as a staff nurse at a hospital.
Right.
But you have to make the decision that you're willing to put up with the rigors of being
Hmm.
uh, out of out of your home base. You know that
Correct.
uh, there's challenges to that, but still, for someone who maybe has realized that they're a nurse and they haven't been saving, maybe getting into this phase
Hmm.
of being a traveling nurse is a way that you can really ramp up the amount that you make per hour.
Hmm.
So for a fast way to uh, maybe do that for a couple of years, especially if the need continues as
Hmm.
we're having it, is a way to be able to make much more money than you were making by doing pretty much the same job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I meant, by career, because it gives you an opportunity to make those choices.
Mhm.
Like you said, maybe you fast track it and you do something like that. Or I'm thinking about, another client who's like, okay, I'm at the top of where I need to be for my career. Maybe I go back and get a certification that will be able to put me into a different, you know, um, bracket,
Mhm.
earning bracket or potential, by just getting a certification. And like I said, during this COVID situation, everybody was learning and getting certificates
Right.
and certifications. So, she was able to get a certification and what she needed. And so she's ready to start looking for extra opportunities in the same career, but now that
Mhm.
she has certification and credentials, look at some of those higher paying positions or employers that in the same career that she has. So as I kind of talk to the audience about it, career is very important because that's going to, like I said, really fuel your earning potential, but also what you can save away for your future. Is that look at your career choices, where you are, where you need to be, making sure you make some of those decisions on getting extra certifications or changing, shifting careers, uh, really to put yourself in the best position to secure your future.
Excellent. And now we're coming to your point number 10. And since the topic here was how women can secure their financial futures, I guess point number 10 is the culmination
Yeah.
of your career. It's at retirement now.
Yeah, is at retirement. So here we are. We're retired, and this would be your future. Hopefully, you've gotten, you've secured it enough. And so, when you get to that phase, making sure you have enough resources. It's always this joke on with financial planners is that we want to get our clients to the point where they don't have to go back to work and work as a Walmart greeter. We
Mhm.
want to make sure they have if they want to, that's fine,
Sure.
have that choice, but not having to go back to work and having a secure future where it's a secure, sustainable retirement.
Mhm.
If having the choice to go back to work if you want to, either part-time or things like that, but not because you have to. So that's kind of what the retirement piece is what do you need to do now in order to secure that sustainable retirement for 30 plus years, because we're living longer and most of the retirements are going to be 30 plus years. So we've worked, probably in retirement longer, almost just as long as we have had a working career.
Mhm.
And so now how do we put that into income? And then what do we produce or income? So that's kind of where you need to, just kind of going working backwards again. What do you need in retirement in order to have a sustainable retirement for 30 plus years? And then working way backwards, what do I need to do now in order to get there? That's still that imagining your future, what your future self is going to need. And then also looking at what you need to budget for what do we need to save, what do we need to invest in. So I'm kind of wrapping all of these up in here. So
Mhm.
that's what this whole thing is about, securing your future to get to that efficient retirement, sustainable retirement, doing all the steps that we talked about. But that's kind of the culmination of what you need to do to sustain a secure retirement.
Excellent. I have a question. I'm not seeing any questions coming in from
Hmm.
our guests, but I've got a question.
Hmm.
Um, Starting with, you have often during our calls, you've mentioned Mint as being a
Hmm.
good tool, a good free tool for
Yeah.
managing your budget and tracking your retirement accounts. And as you have explained how it works, for those people who don't know, Mint syncs to your bank accounts, credit cards, and retirement accounts to help you manage them. And I know it's a great free tool, and I gotta say, who doesn't love a great free tool? But
Hmm.
in my research about getting ready for our call here this evening, I ran across another free tool, and I
Hmm.
want to get your thoughts on it
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
I haven't heard about it before.
Yeah.
Um, um, and maybe I'm going to be talking about something that you're going to say, this is
Hmm.
awful. But, but anyway, I don't know. In doing my research for this call, I discovered that there's a free tool from Experian. Now, for
Hmm.
everybody who probably knows, Experian is one of the three major credit reporting companies. And according to what I read, this tool, which is called Experian Boost, actually
Hmm.
helps boost your FICO credit score by giving you credit for paying eligible bills. Now,
Hmm.
apparently, normally our FICO scores are not impacted by the fact that we might have paid our phone bill, our internet, our
Yeah.
cable on time.
Hmm.
But apparently, so this Experian Boost allows you to get credit for paying your monthly utility and cell phone bills on time, and it adds those payments to your credit file. And
Hmm.
qualifying on-time payments actually include um, not only phone, internet, cable, utility like gas, electricity, water, but streaming payments like Netflix,
Hmm.
HBO,
Yeah.
Hulu, Disney Plus. Who would think you could get benefit from paying your cable bill on time? But apparently, according to this website um, for Experian Boost, it says average users receiving a boost reported a 12-point increase in their FICO score. This
Hmm.
almost sounds too good to be true to me, Pam. So that's why I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or advice or caution about this Experian Boost program.
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients look at it, and I've researched it as well. It seems like it's a, a pretty good situation, especially for people who may or may not have a solid credit score, or people who are just getting started with
Mhm.
credit. It's a way to, with millennials and, Gen Zs, they're going to have a Netflix account, they're going to have some of these things, and it's maybe a way to show that they're able to pay things on time and able to boost their credit score. So I
Mhm.
definitely highly recommend it for people who are, need to get a little bit of boost in their score, but also people who are just starting out, because this will allow them to build credit. I can't remember, I don't know if it was Experian or not, but one of them was going to start having people who were kind of new to to credit, self-reporting. I believe it was one of those bureaus. I can't
Mm.
remember which one it was. But for people who are just getting started, they may or may not have credit. They're able to, and I can't remember what they were self-reporting, but I believe it was Experian. But I think with the bureaus, they really, have been under fire lately
Mhm. They have
because
been, right?
of not reporting correctly. So they're really just trying to make sure they're doing consumers justice as they can. But yeah, I think the boost is a good idea for people who are just kind of starting out or need a little bit extra push on their credit score.
Okay. Are there any other free tools that you recommend to your clients?
It's a lot of them out there. There's You Need a Budget, which is YNAB. That's one of the ones that people use for budgeting. Every Dollar is one of those. Yeah, Every Dollar is
Mhm.
another budgeting tool that people use for cash flow and cash management. So that's and NerdWallet has always been a really good resource. Before they kind of shut it down, I used to contribute some articles and writing to NerdWallet, so they're a good resource as well. For learning, I recommend Investopedia is a good resource just to anything that you want to know. It's kind of, as the term says, kind of an encyclopedia for investing or investors. So Investopedia is really good to look at for learning as
Okay.
well. Mhm.
Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up the call?
No, I think it was very thorough. I just really want to, encourage, probably if I had to encourage anything, would be the learning part, just as
Mhm.
I mentioned before, because all of this, can be learned. So, learning, and then of course having a game plan and putting your goals in place, having written goals if you
Mhm.
can, because that will help you at least get to putting something in place where you have it in writing, you have something definitive that you can to save towards, and so that would be ability to hopefully secure your future.
Thanks, Pam. As usual, it's been great talking to you. You're always a
Yeah.
fountain of wonderful information, and
Thank you.
and it's free. So that's um, going along with what we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah.
So thank you for being my guest and for
Yeah.
providing
Thank
us
you.
with this excellent checklist to help us wrap up March, the month celebrating women. And I look forward to our next discussion, which, barring unforeseen scheduling
Mhm.
changes, will be the fourth Thursday of April, which is the
Mhm.
28th at
Yep.
this same time and location.
Mhm.
And audience, thanks for joining us for this great call with Pamela Sams. If you have any questions after the call, feel free to email them to Pam at pamela@jacksonsams.com. That's
Mhm.
JACKSONSAMS.com, or go to her newly updated website at www.jacksonsams.com.
Mhm.
Finally, if you'd like to know more about the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, check out our website at www.nabbw.com, our forum at Boomer Women Speak, which the forum is not active, but there's a ton of evergreen content there. So
Mhm.
it's worth digging into the content that's there. And our Facebook page is always being updated. So that's at facebook.com/NABBW. That's all I've got to say. So
Yeah.
unless you have anything to say, I'll just say good night and thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Pam.
Yep.
And we'll talk again in a month.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.